Welcome back to the program. I'm Chris McCutcheon, and you're listening to Aging with Options, Louisville's only radio program dedicated to seniors and topics of importance to our senior community and those who care for our seniors. My guest in the studio is Dr. Keith Knapp, President and CEO of Christian Care Communities. We've been talking about the evolution of care options for seniors, and specifically, Keith introduced us to a concept called the greenhouse model, a new option in senior care living intended to sort of deinstitutionalize the care being provided for seniors, and certainly an interesting model that Keith has told us increases clinical outcomes, decreases staff dissatisfaction and turnover, and really interesting model, Keith, an interesting evolution in the care being provided to seniors. What else is what other type of changes do you see in terms of care models and opportunities?
Well, I'll mention one other institutional-based concept, and then let's talk about people who don't need to go anywhere but home.
Right.
A friend of mine who's does what I do in Minneapolis coined this term, so I can't claim it as my original thought, but the idea is an important one. He calls it Hampton Retirement Living. Hampton, patterned after the line of hotels that is kind of a mid-range. It's not your bargain basement hotel. It's not the Marriott, but you know what you're going to get. It's reliable. It's what you need, but isn't the crystal chandeliers. And that's where the biggest group of seniors is going to reside. You know, there's always been pretty good options for people who have plenty of resources, and actually pretty good options for people with nothing. With various government and faith-based kinds of programs. But the big group's in the middle, and so figuring out a way to provide adequate housing that's attractive with competent, smiling staff is this idea of the Hampton Retirement Living, and there are a couple places around the country that have experimented with that successfully, and I think you'll see more of that kind of thinking where people can share their resources in sort of a co-op way and be safe and secure, but not have to become destitute to qualify or have hit the jackpot to qualify.
Do you see that concept increasing in popularity as well? Is there a spread of that movement?
It's pretty small still, but I think the people who are experiencing success with that are going to really benefit the rest of the field by having demonstrated that it's doable.
Right. What do you think motivates some of these changes in care models? We talked earlier about the increase in the population over 65. The demand is there. It's not as if we have to create a better living arrangement to somehow improve the mousetrap in order to have a population that qualifies for this type of care. As you mentioned earlier, there's plenty of folks available or eligible that are going to need this care, but yet there's still an evolution to try to improve it in some way. Is that just an effort to try to capture people and funnel them towards your particular housing option, or is there something else that's motivating?
Well, I think the new senior, mostly the boomers that we're talking about now, or their parents, and so the boomers are involved as the adult children helping their parents find care, are expecting more of a cafeteria buffet of options than used to be. You went to the hospital or to the nursing home or you stayed at home, and now there's a whole continuum that's developing, and it's much more blurred, the distinctions between each step. And that the marketplace is demanding that kind of flexibility and those kinds of options. And so providers that either can do it all or they can affiliate with other like-minded providers so that that's all in a community is what's driving the bus.
Gotcha. Now, receiving assistance and support, getting help with activities of daily living is still an area of focus within these communities, of course, but it sounds like what you're saying is it's not the only area of focus. It's not the primary area of focus. It's not just about making sure that they are getting help day to day with their care and whatnot, but focusing on life and living in general too. Right?
That's right. It's not just the glass is half empty, but it's half full. And how do we play to people's desire to remain well?
Right.
Not just what their disabilities are.
Right.
And that's an important distinction because a lot of people don't view themselves, even when they're looking in the mirror, as an old person. They're a person who just lived longer than everybody else.
Right.
And that's an important thing to remember.
Right. Now, I would imagine that seniors are becoming savvier consumers.
Yes, they are.
Age, right?
Yes, they are. With the advent of the internet and the fastest growing sales last year for even the hardware was in the 80 and over population.
Is that right?
And of course, percentage calculation is on a small number. It doesn't take a lot of growth, but yeah, there's a lot of interest. And if you think about today's 80, 85-year-old and the changes that person has seen in that lifespan technologically. I mean,
Right.
it's no surprise they're not really that intimidated by all the newness.
Right. Right.
They've seen a lot of new.
Right. They've seen a lot of new, and no shortage of access to information.
That's right.
To allow them exposure to what's new out there. Tell us about programs for daycare. I know that's a popular concept as well. Staying at home, but not just being in the home, not transitioning to a facility, but care during the day at a daycare type facility.
This approach is already much bigger on the two coasts than it has yet hit in the Midwest, but it's starting to develop here. And there's several programs, I think 17 or 18 right here in Louisville. It's where child care was in the 60s, and one of the things that I think it'll really vault into prominence in the next 10 years is that it's going to become an issue for employers. Time lost on the job for elder care issues is growing at a dramatic pace, and so people who are the adult children or spouses of someone who needs care of any kind is now finding its way into the workplace, and so employers have a keen interest, a business interest, in trying to make sure that those services are available. And so having adult daycare in your arsenal, even for respite, is an important thing to consider. And so communities are discovering this. And some are discovering that there's a benefit to trying to meld the two in creative ways with intergenerational daycare.
Is that right?
We have a place here in Louisville called the Oak and Acorn that's doing that. And I think you'll see more of that kind of thinking where preschoolers and adults with daycare needs can maybe coexist, not necessarily integrated in the full day program, but opportunities throughout the course of the day for them to interact. And if you think about it, reintroducing a sense of purpose in the lives of the seniors makes all the sense in the world.
Absolutely.
And they really covet that opportunity to show that I've got something to contribute. And they've got one important thing that a lot of parents don't if they're working outside the home: time.
Time.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so these kids, whether it's reading or tutoring or just hanging out and playing, really benefit from the relationship, as do the elders who are called into action. And it's not just a place to go reside for the day, but actually have a purpose with an outcome that you can see happen right before your eyes.
Interesting.
Pretty cool.
So at these facilities, daycare facilities, providing care during the day for seniors as well as children, they're combining the two groups. They're interacting with one another, and they're not segregated. The children are over here, and the senior folks are over in this area. They're interacting with one another.
That's right. Well, they have a little bit of both, because we've learned through experience that if you assume that because that ought to work, the chemistry ought to work, there's a lot of elders who have the opinion that I did my time. So it's not for everybody.
Right.
But for those for whom it really creates a positive in their lives, it's a winner.
Right.
And ElderServe, the organization here that sponsors Oak and Acorn, is to be commended for being out in front on that one. I think you'll see more of that kind of thing coming down the pike.
Very interesting.
A program I want to mention in our time together this morning is called PACE.
Okay.
It's a program of all-inclusive care for the elderly.
Okay.
And this is a movement that has grown out of a program that started 30 years ago in San Francisco called the Unlock program in the Chinatown area of San Francisco. And the long and the short of it is, it puts adult daycare at the very center of the hub on a program to keep people out of institutions, to keep them successful and safe in their homes. And so in the adult daycare arena, they have a full-blown interdisciplinary team headed by a physician. And it's an HMO model where the Medicare and Medicaid money that might have been used for that person to go to a nursing home is instead put in a new pool. And it's what we call a capitated rate. There's a per member per month rate that comes from that pot of money, and it funds all of their care, which is coordinated by this interdisciplinary team. And it can involve daycare. It could involve nursing home care if that's what it needs to. So it's sort of a quasi-insurance product. But in the 39 or 40 communities where this is up and running, it's had a huge impact on diverting people who might have otherwise wound up in a nursing home, or certainly medically eligible to do that, from ever having darkened the door of the nursing home or significantly delaying that decision.
Wow.
And it's a real winner. We have enabling legislation here in Kentucky to do that, and there's ongoing discussions right now about how we can make that happen here in Kentucky, and probably Louisville is going to be one of the better places to consider doing it because of the high density of elders that we have here.
Very interesting. And that's the PACE program, you
right.
said. And tell us again what PACE stands for.
Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly.
Very
So
interesting.
that person's total social needs, medical needs, everything is all coordinated with one air traffic controller, and it just makes the whole thing seamless, and that's why it works.
Excellent, excellent. Great information, Keith. I'm speaking with Dr. Keith Knapp, President and CEO of Christian Care Communities, Louisville's largest faith-based provider of affordable senior housing. We're talking about the latest trends in senior care. We're up against another break. We'll be right back with Keith after these messages. You're listening to Aging with Options on 970 WGTK.